If you search in the AI chatbot, show me a picture of an investor.
Oh, God. Everyone in this room right now is like,
We already know.
We already know.
We already know.
Welcome to the podcast, Elle.
Thanks, Amanda. Happy to be here.
Yeah, I'm really excited for our conversation today. Basically because I don't really know anything about AI. And I think it's a pretty important topic because I think a lot of people have varying degrees of interactions with this. You can't open a book, listen to a podcast, watch a show now without hearing about it. And so not only is it so prevalent in our lives now in modern day society, but we're also, like it's infiltrating, right? It makes it sound so nefarious. I'm going to try not to make it sound nefarious. But, it's a part of our daily lives. Like we all have phones, we all have technology in our homes. And so like it does feel like quite threatening to some people. And so it's kind of like this uneasy, like some people are like, yeah, rah, AI. And then some people are just like, I don't know about this. So, because this podcast is very much about hearing about women who work in male-dominated spaces and also women that do like very interesting, cool jobs. I want to sort of dispel a lot of the myths and sort of like the misinformation about AI. And so like this is such an interesting perspective, your background of like growing up in a small town where you were the visual minority and cultural minority potentially, and then bringing yourself into the world of AI where, what is the demographic there?
Yeah, very few women.
Right.
22% in leadership, if that at all.
My goodness.
Yeah, and women of color even less.
Yes, of course.
Yeah,
Of course.
yeah. Like probably like less than 5%. And so when I hear those statistics and coming from, my experiences in the last, 25 years in corporate, 20 to 25 years, I really felt the inequality as well as the lack of representation. And so AI is an equalizer. It can help you with not only with productivity and being more efficient and various things within your career or your job or your company, but it can be a way for you to show up the way you want to show up if we use it in the right way, if we understand it, and it doesn't take much. Yeah.
That's a much better perspective than I feel like the doom and gloom that I see a lot of the times.
It's sensationalized.
For you, what do you feel like is the biggest misconception about AI?
That you have to be technical to understand AI. And it is so not about like coding or even Excel. It has nothing to do with any of that. It's basically talking, like having a conversation. It's about communication skills. So you and I are talking right now. We can just talk to AI in the same way, and it'll produce the results that are not bad, pretty good. And there's so many tools now where you just press the button, you talk into it, and it just dictates, and the AI understands.
If someone's like brand new to AI, what do you feel like is like the first thing that they could do to sort of get to know how to use this?
Yeah, that's a really good question. Yeah, I think the easiest way is to sign up for something free like ChatGPT. And I do have to preface this with like there's apps on the App Store that are charging. So there's fake ones. So make sure that you get the right one because it's free.
My goodness.
Yeah.
So many pitfalls.
Yeah, there is. And I totally understand why people would not want to dive into this because of all that. And then just start writing, questions like, what is a podcast? And then it'll generate it. And then because it's about it's chatting, pretend you're chatting with this AI chatbot. So it produces an output of what a podcast is. And then the next question can be, well, how do I start a podcast? And you can just continue the conversation that way. And you can also at the end just say, summarize this into, a paragraph that is no more than 100 words. And it just knows how to do it. And it's getting more used to how AI tools like ChatGPT can work. And then just starting to use other features within ChatGPT. Or when you have a need or an idea, think about popping it into ChatGPT to see what kind of output it can produce. So just being curious at the same time.
Right. I mean, like, I have dabbled a bit with ChatGPT out of pure curiosity. I find that the way you ask the prompts that you give it is like pretty important.
Yeah.
Can you like give us some guidance on that? And also, like, just to say, like, Elle and I, by the time this episode comes out, will have already done a workshop on AI. So that's like on the website if anyone wants to watch the actual workshop. But I'm very curious about this because, for example, I was trying to aggregate all of the best restaurants on the Sunshine Coast. So I said, what are all the best restaurants on the Sunshine Coast? And it gave me a lot of restaurants that had already closed. And I'm like starting to realize that I should have maybe asked, like, what are the newest restaurants on the Sunshine Coast, or what are the most popular restaurants on the Sunshine Coast? So could you speak a little bit more to like how you should be talking to AI?
Yeah, there is typically a framework, and then there's a way to so that's kind of like if you really wanted to create some content or something communication wise. When it's something like finding the restaurants on the Sunshine Coast, for example, you can be as direct and concise as possible because AI tries to make you happy, and it does because it's the free version, it does a very quick scan, and so sometimes it overlooks things that you may need. And sometimes you'll have to challenge AI because, again, it's trying not only to make you happy, but it's doing it fast. So prompting or communicating with AI can be complicated. There's roles called prompt engineers, and they can produce pages and pages of prompts of instructions. And that's probably for maybe tech companies or like other big, large enterprises. But for you and I, there's either a simple way of just being more concise, or we can follow a framework, which is called RISN.
Okay.
Yeah. So RISN is R stands for role. You give the AI chatbot a role. So in this case, you can say act as a expert in a restaurant recommendations.
Oh.
And then you can give it some context because you want to dine in, let's say whatever Italian type of restaurants, let's say. So give it some more context. And then S stands for...
So I is information?
Information, yeah, basically. Yeah. they're together. RI. And then S is being more specific. Okay, so I want to dine at Italian restaurants on the Sunshine Coast that has patios, for example. And then the E is like your end goal, because your end goal being, well, because I want to have brunch, near the shore, the beach, but also because I want to have my 6 friends that are coming with me. So the end goal of like, who is going to be the recipient of this information? And then N is narrowing. And whenever you talk to ChatGPT or other large language models, they're also called AI assistants or chatbots. It's so confusing. And I understand that's the reason why.
They all mean the same thing.
They all mean the same thing. And people are like so confused and not really wanting to start because of that.
Yeah, fair.
And I get it. But N is narrowing, and it really means to polish up what output that you want. So you can say, put it into a table format, or each summary no longer than 50 characters. My personal favorite, and I think everybody should be leaving all ChatGPT or large language model conversations with is ask me clarifying questions until you're 95% sure you can complete the task. And so what the large language model will do is ask you probably between 3 and 6 questions just to kind of get an idea of what exactly you're trying to ask me here.
Do you think like eventually you won't have to prompt it with that? Okay.
Yeah.
Cool, because that seems like an extra step.
It is an extra step, but it gives you more personalized output. And it also, because ChatGPT has a memory, it'll eventually know like your style, like your preferences, and it won't ask you those type of questions anymore.
Okay. That is so helpful.
I'm glad.
I built this giant guide to the Sunshine Coast because I'm running a summer camp there. And I ended up just doing it myself, like manually. I know. And you're like, no, it breaks your heart as an AI expert. But now I know for next time how I'm actually going to use it.
Can I give you a piece of advice? Okay. So ChatGPT is great for idea storming, for writing emails and just kind of generating ideas. But I feel like there's some limitations with ChatGPT versus another AI tool that I think you're going to love and you will use over Google from now on. And I'm not sponsored, but it's called perplexity.ai.
Okay.
And you know how when you're using Google and you're getting your sponsored ads and like just it's pay for play, whoever's got the most money will have like the show up on the top of the links or the top links. And you're just having to doom click to try to find answers. Perplexity gives you concise answers and it gives you the sources. And it's quick and it reads from authoritative sources. So you're not getting marketing.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
Oh, so like it's like unpaid content.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. And since I've discovered this like 8 months ago, I have not used Google other than like Google Maps to get here, things like that. Or
you're like, Perplexity, drive me to the podcast studio.
Yeah.
I mean, eventually, right?
Hopefully. Yeah, hopefully. I think they're working on that.
Interesting. Okay. I want to go back to something you said because this is like both maybe intriguing, but also a little scary. When you say AI is trying to make us happy, what does that mean?
Yeah.
Because like, I don't know. I was listening to a podcast recently and they're saying that like AI knows how to lie now. Like, how are we not supposed to be scared of this? That's a second question.
Okay, yeah.
First question is, what do you mean? Like, what do you mean by it's trying to make us happy? And a second follow-up question would be like, how do we trust it if it's just trying to make us happy?
Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good question. So AI, the algorithm, the way it's designed is based on predictions. And so when you're thinking about all the training data that it's being built on, it's just grabbing all that information from the past and giving you the output based on that. And because it's wanting to give you output, it's getting you, because we're on the free version, it's giving you the quickest sort of like answer possible. So there's been cases where somebody was trying to generate there was a new product coming out and they wanted to announce it. I can't remember what the name of that is, but like some kind of like announcement on their website, for example. And so
a press release?
Press release. Thank you. Thank you. So they're trying to do a press release and they used AI and they said in ChatGPT, they said, and bring in a quote from the CEO about this new product. And so the AI tool, ChatGPT in this case, created and just made up this quote that the CEO had said. And because the individual had fact checked it, they found out that the CEO had never talked about this product ever. Mm-hmm. So AI again is trying to put things together really quickly and based on past press releases, so they're making these things up and it's called hallucinations. But we can train it.
The AI is having hallucinations?
It's called hallucinations. The AI is just trying to bring in information that it thinks will help you in order to complete the task. But there's a way where you can say, especially in ChatGPT, there's a preference setting where you can instruct it to say, don't always make me happy, challenge me, play devil's advocate. And that way it will prevent more hallucinations. It's not going to be 100%, but it'll definitely cut it down substantially.
That is so interesting. Just reminds me of like Minority Report, where like they started to think that the precogs were like coming up with like random memories. How are we not supposed to be scared of that?
Yeah, I know it's hard not to be. I get it. I always think about when cars were invented and everybody was riding horses and like, no, I don't need a car. But then when you discover the efficiencies about having, with having a car and all of that, you're either for it or not. But when you start driving the car, you start loving it. But then you also think there's some dangers involved, like speeding, for example, not enough roads, or there's just small paths and, there's safety issues and whatnot. So I feel like AI is kind of in that sort of same phase. We're trying to discover things, discover the needs, discover the guardrails, the guidelines, the governance, and all of that at the same time. And AI is moving really fast. And you know how it is with red tape and with government, where they're trying to do the right thing with the information that they have and trying to make the right decision, but they're not making it fast enough. And so we have the onus on ourselves to create our own governance structure, to create our own guidelines, to be ethical in our own ways as we delve into using AI. And that is not to say that we should be scared. That is to say that we're doing our best to use it in a way that's the safest for us and whoever we're interacting with.
I guess that's best case scenario. But I'm like, I think a lot of people's concern is you read books like Careless People, or you're hearing about, or it's just you're experiencing what a monster social media has become and how it was so not ethically handled in so many instances that it's hard to believe that we're going to do the right thing with this movement. So I think that that's maybe why people are even more scared, because we're at the apex, maybe not even just at the apex of like witnessing the destruction of social media. So like, or sorry, not the destruction of social media, but the destruction that it's laying in its wake. I do know that there's a ton of value in social media. It connects people. And I think that was always like maybe the goal in the end. But as a result, it's become this machine that has been terrible for people's mental health, has made us all like, I don't know, really unable to focus, and, the spread of misinformation, and it just hasn't really been ethically handled, in my opinion, and a lot of people's opinions. So as a result, like, I think it's making people really hesitant about AI. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. It's kind of like the repeat of something, but at a much faster rate.
Totally.
Yeah. I see that too. And I think the major AI providers like the Metas, the Perplexity, the Anthropics, OpenAI with ChatGPT, I think they're putting in like a huge amount of investments in trying to make sure that they're doing it responsibly, in a way that not only because they understand the devastation that AI can produce. Like they're already talking about how other if it gets into the wrong hands, if it's used inappropriately, it can really be game changing. And so they're investing quite a lot of money in that. Having said that, there's they're probably not moving fast enough. There's reliance on governments in terms of like what their AI strategies and outlooks are, and then it's the global participation, and how do you kind of move along when there's so many big moving parts. Yeah, I get that, and there's a lot of talk about that doom and gloom. And yeah, one needs to hope that it's.
Yeah. I mean, like, I'm not trying to put this all on you, be like, okay, so like, why?
Yeah, of course.
Elle, tell us what we're supposed to do.
Yeah.
I wish we had the answers. Yeah, this is not to say that, people should be anti or pro AI. I think what I'm trying to get to is the emotion behind it, because our reaction, in my community anyway, is resistance. It's too scary. Like, we don't. And it's from a place of, I think part of it is from a place of not knowing how to use it, number one. And number two is also because we're all a little traumatized from what's happened with us and like just the internet and technology. Like, I think my generation is the last one to remember when we didn't have the internet. So, what does that mean for us now? And like, I think millennials now are sort of getting to that. I mean, elder millennials like me are getting to a place where we're like starting to not understand certain types of technology. So that insecurity is like even worse, because we're like, okay, like me specifically, like cannot deal with TikTok. Like it just like breaks my brain, but I know you're on TikTok. So, I'm just slower to adopt things now. And that's, it makes all of this that much scarier. So that's all to say that it's not going to go away. AI is here to stay, and it will become whatever it becomes. And I want everyone to start from there, which is that we need to accept that this isn't going anywhere, right? So do you feel like you experience like, or you see a lot of anxiety and stress in people when they're trying to adopt AI?
Yes, for sure. Yeah. And I totally understand that. And there's always a difference between the stress and the anxiety between like with women versus men.
Tell me about that.
Women tend to think it's cheating.
Oh my God, that's classic.
Right? Like, no, we have to do everything on our own. We got to prove it to ourselves. We got to work hard and not rely on anybody or anything,
Oh my gosh, that is like so true, actually. I feel that way.
Mm-hmm.
I do. Yeah. I feel like I'm cheating.
Yeah. Yeah. And then meanwhile, like men, apply for jobs that they're only qualified for like 50%. Like, we have to wait till, 80 to 90%. So I digress. But we also feel like technology, women don't tend to put up their hands for technology changes or like being champions of that change in our companies or being the first ones to try it out. Like there's just so much going on for women.
That's so true. Like AI is built off of, like all of our data, like I said before, like lived experiences and all this information. And all of the stuff that's public and that's been out there, most of it is generated by men. Yeah. So if we start from the baseline of like what we're dealing with here, like we weren't in the picture from the beginning of this.
Correct.
So us feeling like outsiders is actually super valid, right?
Yeah. Yeah. It wasn't made for us. It was made for a certain segment of the population.
So I know the answer to this because I was like, we should be on a podcast together. Why should women be more involved in AI?
Yeah. So many reasons. First one being because of the gender bias that's already baked into AI. We're not as represented. Therefore, the output perpetuates those stereotypes, those biases. So, for example, if I can give you, if you search in the AI chatbot, show me a picture of an investor.
Oh, God. Everyone in this room right now is like, we already know. We already know.
Follow it up with, show me a picture of an investor wearing a skirt.
Oh my God, is it a man wearing a skirt?
A man wearing a skirt.
No.
Yeah. Show me a picture of an investor with painted fingernails.
Oh my gosh. So interesting.
Yeah. All men. Right? So women aren't investors in the training data.
Oh.
Yeah. So how do you think that's impacting women when we go to the bank,
Right.
and the bank's using AI. So in fact, financial services companies are lending more money, giving more credit to men than women with the exact same credit history, exact same credit score.
Because of because of the technology, or because of AI, or because that's just what they used to do? Because I think they've always done that.
Training, which ends up being part of the training
The
data.
chicken or the egg.
Yeah, it's part of that training data because they've always done that, right?
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Oh, so it's perpetuating.
It's perpetuating those inequities.
Wow.
And the only difference was a name change. A man had the exact same credit history, everything, used a male name versus a female's name.
That is so interesting. I was listening to Brene Brown's interview with Dr. Joy Bolamwini. I think I sent it to you.
Oh, yes. Yeah. She's,
She was talking about Dr. Latanya Sweeney, who was the first woman to get a computer science PhD from MIT. And she was being interviewed by this reporter, and the reporter was trying to look up her papers online, and was served ads suggesting that Dr. Sweeney had been arrested or had an arrest record. And when she mentioned this to Dr. Sweeney, she was like, I've never been arrested. And the reporter was like, well, it's probably because your name sounds Black.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And she was like, what? And so she went and like did a bunch of tests, and it was actually true. If you have a name that is like typically a Black name, it'll serve you ads specifically about like police records.
Yeah.
Like what?
Yeah.
It's crazy. Like stuff like that. And like, don't even get me. I mean, we will talk about this, but like apparently like AI can't even recognize Black women's faces.
Darker skin tones.
Yeah. It like misgenders them. And this is all because whatever's being fed into AI is bias.
Yeah. Yeah. It's affecting healthcare, law enforcement, finances, like when you apply for jobs, for example. Oh, I need to tell you this one.
Okay.
I
Yeah,
need
please.
to tell you this one. So Amazon had this hiring AI tool where it didn't let resumes proceed to the next level if the resume had any mention of women's anything. So in this case, it was women's chess club or graduating from a women's college. It automatically went to the no pile.
Why?
Yeah, it just didn't see that as valuable.
Oh my gosh.
So obviously Amazon, got rid of that program, but like that's just stating like the historical inequities
Sure.
in the training data where they're now in some of these tools that people are paying for.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, I mean like I think that's like another level of kind of being like, okay, I am actually worried about how this is going to affect people because it's perpetuating all of these stereotypes and biases. And I personally don't have a lot of faith that legislation can keep up with regulations around this because like, I mean, like watching, like Facebook be like, try to in Congress and like all these, like, trying to like, they're trying to like ask them questions about things and they just sidestep everything and then it just goes away. So anyway, that's all to say, this is our reality right now, which is that AI is very present. People are using it for what you're talking about, which is healthcare, jobs, HR, medical stuff. If these biases exist now, what you're saying is that we as women need to show up more so that these biases aren't perpetuated. Is that right?
Yeah. Yeah. And we show up by using AI. And I mean, when we use AI, we're talking about ourselves, our lived experiences, our perspectives. That all counts, right? That's something that's been missing for even on the internet for so long. Or not, and maybe not even just missing. There's just not enough of it.
Right.
But also participating in like leading AI projects at work or, advocacy work or challenging bias when you see it. Like conversations like this, just sharing that AI is biased. I think there's still a lot of people that don't think it is biased. So just even raising that awareness.
Yeah, I think people think it's kind of like like a neutral like tool.
Yeah.
And that is like, do you think that that's like one of the bigger misconceptions about AI?
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Like it's like the all-knowing
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah. It's like a miracle maker, you know, and it's able to produce such awesome, cool like content in seconds. And yes, this is what I'm going to go with. But people don't, because they're so mesmerized and so reliant on it, they're not necessarily thinking like deeper.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's like what people had a lot of issue with when it came to crowdsourcing information, just like what the original AI, like Reddit.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it's so funny because, you know, whenever you're like searching for things, if you want just like a lot of content, you just type in like, I like nice watches. And then, but if you want like if you want the actual truth, you type in nice watches Reddit.
Okay. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
But like AI is like sort of like it's all of that aggregated information. Yeah. And so you have to also take everything with a grain of salt because that's how you use Reddit.
You know, interesting enough, Reddit is, despite the nonsense that's on Reddit.
No offense, everyone.
Yeah, no offense. I'm on Reddit.
I love Reddit.
Yeah, I love Reddit too.
Fantastic.
Yeah. But there's like other, you know, ways of using it. AI actually really loves sourcing Reddit because the diehard, you know, users of like, you know, a Sony Walkman, whatever, you know, whatever, they're just on there talking about their perspective and their use cases and whatever. And so you've got your true specialists and lovers of whatever product in it. And so that's why it gets sourced. But the algorithm knows to sort of like peel out the other kind of nonsense type of comments.
Can you be like AI, like, or like ChatGPT, like pull the most popular watches from Reddit forums?
I'm pretty sure they can do that. Yeah.
I mean, because like, I think the most appealing part of AI, which kind of pushed me to start using it, was that they were like, oh, this is a great tool for consuming a lot of, like, condensing information. Because there is so much, as you said, nonsense out there. It's just like trash that like, it's so nice to have like a curated, like, this is what you would be getting from like 3 hours of research.
Exactly. Yeah. You're getting concise summaries or information in a short period of time. And even though, you know, I always tell people, you know, AI can do 80% of the work, there still should be at least 20% of human oversight, right? Because, you know, you just need to double check. But yeah, it's such a time saver. So rather than the alternative, which is, clicking and, you know, jotting down, copy and pasting and whatever, I mean, it's so much more efficient.
We talked a little bit about how people can get into AI, like the lowest barrier. So that's like downloading these apps like ChatGPT and like start asking it questions. But as women and this kind of concern for trying to fight these biases that exist already within AI, like what are like tactile things that we can start doing besides like, you know, downloading these apps and start like, I don't know, teaching it feminism.
Yeah.
I'm like, read this Bell Hooks novel right now.
Yeah. So when when you've got a little bit of confidence on playing around with ChatGPT, for example, try other tools because some of them are better for different tasks. One's Claude. You know, I've already talked about Perplexity, Notebook LM. I love Notebook LM. It's made by Google. And it's kind of funny because it can create a podcast. So,
Amy, we need to talk about.
Are we going to edit this? I hesitated talking about this. Yeah. But it's neat because you can just copy and paste a link from YouTube or an article, like a web article or a PDF or whatever. Click on audio overview, and then within 7 minutes, you've got podcast, like two people talking about the content, and it sounds so real.
Oh, it's like not real people.
It's not real people. It's AI generated.
That's so creepy, Elle.
It is, but it sounds so real. It's shockingly good.
Okay. I'm going to keep it real, but that's interesting.
Yeah. And then, you can make mind maps out of it, and briefing documents, FAQs is just fantastic. So it just saves you time again. So dabble in some of these, and then take a workshop.
Our workshop.
So many. Yeah, our workshop. Yeah. And just sign up to a couple of free newsletters. Those are always good. I know there's a lot of like techie stuff in there, but there's some gems in there that, are great for the everyday non-technical.
Oh, okay, great. We'll get a list from you, and then we'll put it in the show notes. Sure. That's a great way to just like kind of like passively sort of start to and just like try to integrate it into little things. Like I've had a lot of friends, and it sounded so wild to me when they first told me this. They're like, I'm using ChatGPT to like help me get through this breakup.
Mm-hmm. Amanda, what's really interesting? Just recently, there was a study that came out that shared what the top uses of ChatGPT or the large language models were. And you know how we're used to using it for writing and emails, like whatever, changing it up. It is now about companionship and therapy. That's number one.
I heard that's like a Gen Z thing.
Okay. Yeah,
I've heard through my community, like, I feel like it sounds so old. Millennials definitely don't use it for, I think less of us use it for that. I think most of us use it for like information and to like, as I said, condense productivity. Yeah. But apparently Gen Z is like very into using it to like digest and sort of sort through their feelings.
Okay. Yeah. But then there's some like hesitation with that, I feel, because depending on the person you are, it could be information that's not targeted enough to who you truly are. As in, like, if you're a woman of color, underrepresented communities. So the type of information is generally more towards, certain segments of the.
Oh, I see. So that's like the asterisk at the side of that is like, okay, got it. I mean, like, I think there's a concern for privacy.
Yeah.
And like maybe not wanting to participate in giving up your private thoughts and ideas and like feelings to the greater like, bucket of data.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, there's this fine line where if you're, part of the underrepresented community, like, should we be private because how we're participating in AI can help change the algorithm. So if we're too private, then we're not contributing to sort of like the greater, equity goal. But then at the same time, if you're sharing too much, then companies that own these large language models can actually will hold on to the information, and if there's any kind of legal matters, whatnot, can actually hand that information about you over.
Yeah, I mean, I think there was a concern about that with like the 23andMe stuff, that like the data that you're giving them about your heritage and your health conditions could eventually be sold to health providers, and that information could potentially cause biases again, or very, very, very specific marketing materials targeted to you, which is kind of scary.
Yeah.
And so like, I guess like, what would you say to someone that had those kind of concerns about privacy and anonymity? Yeah, whatever. Because like, I guess like I think some people don't understand like what happens, what comes out. Like if you were to just be like, all this, like you just start talking about your private thoughts and ideas and all these things, where is this being recorded and like to what detail? Like, do they know that Amanda said this and that she will be targeted added with this stuff? Or does it just go into this big bucket where everybody stays anonymous?
So it goes into the big bucket, but there's names attached to it. Okay. Your profile. There is an incognito option.
Right.
But that information gets retained for 30 days. So it's not, it's still there.
So this is like if you don't sign up for an account for ChatGPT, but you're just like kind of like you don't sign up, but you just ask it questions.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So the free version definitely, at least with ChatGPT, because it's free, your information is part of the training data. But if you pay for it, so I think it's $20 US a month, there's better controls. And then the enterprise version with, when large companies, definitely there's safety protocols there. So when we're talking about just us using the free version, I just say, only share the information you're willing, that you're comfortable with sharing
right
publicly. So,
right. I understand.
Yeah. So don't.
Like you pay, you pay for it's free, but you pay for it because they're able to use all that stuff
in exchange.
Yeah, and you're not allowed to really like have a lot of say.
Yeah. Yeah. You can eventually you can delete some memories, but by then, there's already like a footprint on like ChatGPT's training data or data center, the data that they're retaining for everyone. But yeah, so that's like a very good sort of guideline. Like don't upload information with your name, address, date of birth, social insurance number, nothing like that. Yeah, only what you're comfortable with everyone knowing.
What is your like kind of optimistic view of AI in our future? There is a lot of, like I said, doom and gloom, and I'm still like not totally convinced, but maybe a little bit more open to it now that I've had this conversation with you. But I know that you're so passionate about this. Like, can you kind of give us some insight into what you think this could mean for us, like as as a human race?
Yeah, as
no
a human
pressure.
race. Yeah. Oh dear. Okay. I think there's awareness about the implications that this will have, AI will have on humans, to the point where people are scared, including people that are the tech companies themselves in AI. So to me, I know that in the next couple of years, there's going to be AI agents that can, you just tell it what to do, and it'll just do it for you. You don't have to stay in front of the computer. It'll make phone calls for you. It can make reservations for you. It can do like just, it's like your assistant, really.
Sure.
So in terms of that, I think for women, we're going to have more work-life balance, right? Like that, if we can be comfortable enough to rely on our agents to do the work for us, we're going to have so much more time with our family, so much more time to work out, to eat well, to socialize. So I really am looking forward to that, despite knowing that there's like these doom and gloom scenarios out there. Because I kind of feel like with this awareness of this doom and gloom, there's going to be a mitigation of that because it's just that scary. Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI, which created ChatGPT, he's very influential. He talks a lot about it too, about how like these guardrails are super important, how the potential of all these AI agents maybe not even listening to us anymore. So they're working really hard and trying to figure out how to like press the stop button, should that happen. That's more than what we can do right now. We have, so what's in our control is, embracing these tools, trying to understand it, and just being aware of those mitigation strategies and whatnot that these big companies are trying to implement.
Yeah. I think people just have maybe not so much faith.
Yeah, I get that.
Which is fair.
Yeah, I totally get that. Yeah.
But like also like what are we supposed to do?
Yeah.
Right.
I also feel because the AI race is heating up between the US and China.
Sure.
And China has become very much more around sharing. They're open sourcing everything.
Yes.
And I love that. Whereas the US is more about capitalism, like, like let's try to make the most money for our shareholders.
Right.
So because of that race and China's obviously very cognizant of that doom and gloom as well, because they've got a lot at stake, equally as much at stake, if not more. And so we're not just relying on sort of like the capitalistic companies, capitalistic driven companies in North America. There's a good balance with globally. Yeah.
Another thing that I think we didn't really touch on too much was the fact that not only are like women's experiences and also ideas and sort of like womanhood in general isn't really so prevalent in AI data, but our jobs are also at stake. I should have looked up the statistic before we sat down today, but it's something like 70% of jobs mostly held by women will be affected by AI.
Yeah, women and people from underrepresented communities. Because if you think about women, like when you think about certain roles, certain careers, they're mostly women, like receptionists, for example, customer service, even accountants.
Right.
A lot of women are accountants. Yeah,
those jobs are just going to shift and change.
They will shift. Customer service will likely be non-existent because you're going to use, you're already going to IKEA and you're having to enter, your order in now, right? And going to the library and you're entering and,
sure,
you're checking out yourself and all that. Yeah, definitely like the entry-level roles and certain professions that are women dominated, but also, underrepresented communities. Like there's so many jobs where only underrepresented communities would take on. And because of the efficiencies of AI to be able to replace repetitive tasks, mundane tasks, it's cheaper. It's available 24/7. There's no labor issues. The folks that aren't as educated or are new to Canada and just trying to get going with their lives and with their new lives, they'll be impacted.
How are you trying to mitigate that through your work?
Yeah, I'm trying to educate as many people as I can. I have a mission to educate at least 100,000 women and people from underrepresented communities this year. It's a lofty goal, but it's also, I think, a lofty enough goal to raise awareness about this issue.
Yes, of course.
And if we're not able to provide accessible AI literacy and democratize it, then all the gaps get wider and wider.
Right. The doom and gloom becomes like reality.
Yeah. Everything like I feel like I feel like AI can not only equalize things and increase productivity, but if the training data had more representation, more information from women and underrepresented communities, it's a great way to combat racism, combat all the isms, right? I mean, because everybody's going to be using AI. And if that data was neutral,
sure,
we consume that. And that changes the way we communicate, the way we operate, the way everything we show up.
Yeah. I mean, that is definitely a more optimistic way of looking at it, which I don't think like we should discount at all. Like I think what we're dealing with right now is like an initial sort of like resistance to change. Learning something new at any age, but specifically for us elder millennials, is so terrifying, especially when there is a threat to our daily lives, our livelihoods, just like the way that we operate every day. But I guess like what I'm hearing from you anyway is we should stay curious about this and to just like not shy away from it.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. We have to at least give it a try, understand it. The more you understand it, the more you can figure out ways to use it to your advantage, but also to prepare yourself for that future that we're scared of.
Okay, I have some like lightning round questions.
Okay.
It's like a very
round.
serious conversation that we've had so far. You used to work in finance, right?
Yes.
Okay, great. So I'm going to start with some money questions because one part about this podcast is that I want us to be more open about sharing information about like how much money we're making, like what, like it's just like women don't talk about finance enough, in my opinion. So I guess like maybe you could start out by saying like, what is like your one rule for money?
Ooh, always sock away 50% of your, okay, when you're younger.
50%
of your paycheck. Yeah. When you're younger. Nowadays, like if, you know, we've got families and mortgages and whatnot, you know, at least a good 20%, put it away into a rainy day fund. Don't spend it. Just have it taken out automatically, like every week. So you don't even miss it. It's like your lunch money.
Right.
Yeah.
And you've done this for always?
Yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. I don't think anyone can do 50% these days, especially in Vancouver.
Yeah.
But you're saying basically as much as you can.
Yeah.
You can do.
Yeah.
That's
as much as you can do without it really impacting you, like you don't even notice it type of.
Yeah, like $20.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. We spend that on lunch like once a week, right? Or whatever, or dinner.
We spend that on a freaking sandwich.
Yeah, a day, right? Yeah.
It's crazy.
Yeah, that's true. That it is crazy now.
What's been your favorite age?
Oh, 50s.
50s?
Yeah, yeah. And I think because for me...
You're in your 50s?
I'm in my 50s, yeah.
My goodness. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah. I think it's because I know I'm more confident. I'm more sure of myself. I don't care what everybody thinks.
This is what I'm looking forward to.
Yeah. And it's fun because my kids are older. I'm in a little bit different. I'm also in, you know, I picked up and left my kids here, moved over to Montreal with my husband. So we're starting dual income, no kids 2.0. Yeah. And so it's everything that we did before kids, even better. Yeah. And just like the friends and our social, it's less stressful in a way.
I hear that.
Yeah.
I hear it kind of, you just kind of like stop caring as much.
Yeah.
And it sort of melts away.
Yeah.
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 Great. What is the best part about being a woman in your industry? And what is the worst part?
Okay. The best part is inspiring other women.
Yes.
And
I agree.
And yeah. And I have a very like inclusionary like approach to things. So when I see a woman of color and other Asian women, for example, like telling me how whatever AI tool has changed their life, like that means more to me than getting paid.
Yes.
Right. Yeah. That is so meaningful for me. Like I just feel, and maybe that's kind of like where I feel like my purpose in life is now, is just making that impact on others. I don't know if there's anything.
I mean, the trolls maybe is the worst.
Oh yeah, actually that's true.
Because like you're like really active on TikTok, which is like I'm so impressed by that.
It does scare me.
It's scary.
It's scary. Yeah, especially when I know like a lot of my viewers are from the States.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I'm like, am I sharing too much? Like, can they find me? Like, do I have to block up more in my background? Like, yeah. So yeah, there is.
Yeah. But you have to keep doing it.
Yeah.
Right? I mean, that kind of like is an indicator that it must be something that needs to be said.
Yeah. I will not let them stop me. Like,
right.
It's not something. And I feel like I don't know if there's very many of us talking about equity and AI on social media.
Yeah. I mean, like I literally like had a conversation with you and the only other person I knew was Joy.
Yeah.
Bolawini. Yeah. The only other person who I will link in the show notes as well.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's super important. Okay. What is the number one thing that people ask you about AI?
Which tool to use?
It's always so like just simple like that.
Yeah. And they expect me to say ChatGPT, but my favorite is Claude. Claude.ai. Yeah. It's one of the top 3. And I'm more about rooting for the underdogs, I guess. Mm-hmm. ChatGPT has a lot of users, millions of users, great tool, but not best for everything.
Sure.
And I love Claude because it does not trade your information for the training data.
Oh.
So it has more responsibility.
It's more moral.
Yeah, it's more moral. And so I do love that. And it produces the output that I prefer, the way it's written. So many other advantages of it.
Great. I will be downloading that.
Yeah. And it's free. Yeah, it's free.
Great. My last question is like, how do you keep going? Like, cause okay, so all these conversations that I'm having are with like women that are kind of like pushing against a wall, you know, like you're in industries that there aren't a lot of people that look like you or sound like you. So like, what are it's kind of meant to be like tips for people that are maybe listening or watching, but I'm interested to hear about like whether it's like a certain kind of self-care, something that you do personally that like helps you regulate. What's something that keeps you going?
I don't want this to sound like really whatever way it's going to sound, but I am really driven to make sure that there's equity in the world. I know that's a very lofty goal.
I mean, like I run that academy, so
yeah. But I'm so driven to ensure that mostly people of color are not left behind.
Sure.
And I've had bad experiences, right? And so those experiences are what's driving me. You know, it's so interesting because I could be at my computer 12 hours a day and don't even notice it because I just feel like I need to do more. I need to do more. It's almost like not a hunger, but like an obsession.
Yes.
And yeah, I don't want to make myself sound like, you know, whatever, but it really truly is about that mission. Yeah.
Yeah. It fuels you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't say anything other than an obsession. Yeah.
You're like, I keep going because I'm obsessed with this.
Yeah. It's a healthy obsession.
That's great. Thank you so much for being here today, Elle. It was so awesome hearing about your story. And then also just like, I feel a bit better about AI now, which I think is like, you can add me to your little like list of number of people.
Okay, good.
Yeah, I can't wait for us to educate more women together. And thank you for the amazing work that you do.
Thank you. Thank you for your amazing work. And thank you for reaching out and such awesome questions too.
Yeah, thank you. All right. Thanks so much. Stay bad.